Google Maps was first launched in 2005, and since then, it's proven to be a very useful tool. It's become a staple in many people's lives. It's totally changed the way we think about geography and navigation. This is the Google Maps Iceberg. It shows all the weird stuff that can show up on Google Maps. It's pretty common for Google to black out or blur out things on Google Maps that they don't want you to see. They usually do this for privacy reasons. For instance, do you recognize this house? Does this house feel familiar to you? If it does, there's a good reason why. This is Gumball Watterson's house from The Amazing World of Gumball. You can actually find the house they use for the show on Google Maps. It used to not be blurred out, but it is now probably to protect the privacy of the current homeowners. So overall, that makes sense. On the other hand, here's an island north of the South China Sea that just has both sides of it blacked out. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I think this island is called Manu Ana. I read in an article from 3 that China set up a scientific research base on the island to study aquaculture. So it looks like there's a Chinese settlement on the island. Whether or not you believe China set up this base for aquaculture research is up to you. I mean, this is the Chinese government we're talking about here. They're not exactly known for being transparent. This island is in an area of the South China Sea known as the M Field Bank, and there's always been a dispute over whether China or Taiwan controls this area. It seems like China probably set up the research base to gain a foothold in the area, so it's likely that there are a bunch of reasons this island might have blacked out spots on it. Maybe there's some sort of Chinese base on the island that Google wants to keep hidden. Maybe Google isn't sure if this island is China's or Taiwan's, so they just black it out to avoid a conflict or something. It could also be some sort of mapping glitch. I mean, these black spots have been around for a while, so I doubt it's a glitch. If it was a glitch, it's likely Google would have fixed it by now. There's another example of something mysteriously censored on Google Maps, a Russian town called Button. For a while, some of the houses in this town were scribbled out with some sort of white marking. That white scribbling is gone now, but that's weird. I mean, those scribbles were definitely put there on purpose, so take it with a grain of salt. And of course, it's not uncommon for military bases or government buildings to be blurred out for national security reasons or something along those lines. And actually, while we're on the topic, this entry on the Iceberg military bases is probably just referring to how they're blurred out a lot of the time on Google Maps. Take this air base in Spain, for example. Its runways are blurred out, and this other base in France is so low res that you can't even tell what's going on. Face in the clay, this entry on the Iceberg is probably just referring to this thing in Alberta, Canada, known as the Badlands Guardian. It's a natural formation of rock and clay that looks like a face when you look at it from above. As for North Korea, this entry is probably talking about the fact that North Korea has very limited Google Maps data. There's hardly any info on businesses in North Korea. There's not much Street View data either. The few photospheres you can access there were probably put there by tourists, and they give off an eerie and isolated vibe. There's a spot in Rome, Italy called Largo, Dori, Argentina, and it's basically a cat sanctuary now. It was originally built as a historical Roman monument, but then a bunch of cats started moving in, and now it's basically just this cat sanctuary. For a while, Google Maps had a photo of the cat there, but when you viewed it, you could only see the cat. I'd guess that buffalo is just referring to the buffalo you can see on Google Maps. Two-legged cat sent you is referring to this picture of a two-legged cat. This pic has been around for a while, and it's sort of a meme. A lot of people thought this pic was from Google Maps, like it was a cat ripped off of Google Street View, but it's actually just a Photoshop. It's actually a Photoshopped image of a cat on a roof. There's a house in Mississippi with your face on it, and it's pretty much just a Photoshopped image. There's not much to it. So this is about this walking path in Tokyo, Japan. After you follow the path for a while, you'll just stumble upon a bunch of pigeons. If I had to guess what's going on here, there's a Musashino Art University pretty close by, so maybe some art students were just out doing some art stuff. The next entry is about a man falling down some stairs, and it takes us to Hoboken, New Jersey. If you look to your left, you'll see they blurred it out. But before they blurred it out, you could actually see this guy on the stairs. I really like this one. There's this road in Poland where you'll come across a rabbit that sort of looks like it gets up and flies away. It's pretty cool, right? It's pretty funny. It's likely that this rabbit is getting hit by the Google car. It's wild because he actually gets air. Big rabbit. So in northern Italy, there's this mountain called the Kedova Mountain, and this art group by the name of Gallatin decided just to put a giant stuffed pink rabbit on top of it. People could drive to it and climb around on it and stuff. From what I've seen on Google Maps, it looks pretty intimidating. It was installed in 2005, and it was supposed to last, but it started rotting and decomposing really fast. By 2016, it was pretty much gone. Nowadays, if you try to visit this rabbit, you won't find it, but you'll still see the outline that it left behind. Google has similar features for Mars and Moon, called Google Mars and Google Moon. As for whales, I guess this is just about how you can sometimes spot whales on Google Maps. Here are a couple you can see off the coast of Hawaii. Dick Church in the great state of Illinois in the city of Dixon is home to the Christian Science Society of Dixon. It doesn't look like a penis. Rainbow plane. Sometimes when low-flying planes are caught on Google Maps, they have this kind of rainbow effect to them. It seems like this happens because the satellite cameras capture red, blue, and green at slightly different times. Since the plane is moving really fast, it gives the colors a kind of distorted effect. Google's car pulled over, so it's probably referring to Street View. If you go into Street View and come into this town called Golly in West Virginia, you can see a police car pop out as you're coming through the town. He follows you for a while, and you can see him turn on his lights and then just pull you over. It's hard to tell why this happened. Maybe the Google car was speeding, or maybe the cop thought the camera on top of the car was a hazard. There's a park in Amsterdam called Barracks Park that has a dock, and it's called the Murder Dock. If you check out Google Maps, you'll see that for a while the dock was shown like that. It's got the look of someone who was murdered, left bleeding, and then dragged out onto the dock. But that's not what's going on here. It's more likely that some guy had a wet dog and the wet dog went out on the dock and dripped all over it. The poor satellite quality just made it look like blood. I think masked people is just a typo, and it has something to do with the mask-wearing people. It's probably referring to these masked guys you can find just standing around on this road while you're going through Mexico. There's no info on this. It's just weird masked people standing out in the middle of Mexico. The Ariel Castro kidnappings were a series of kidnappings that took place between 2002 and 2004, where a man by the name of Ariel Castro abducted 3 girls and held them captive in his house. The girls were constantly abused and tortured, and Michelle Knight, who was abducted in 2002, didn't escape until 2013. That's like over 10 years. It's a really messed up story. This entry on the Iceberg kidnapper house is about how the house that this all went down in is now blurred out on Google Maps. There's a creature on the balcony, and there's a city called Nancy in France with a neighborhood where the house is blurred out on Street View for some unknown reason. It doesn't make much sense until you go back in time and see what used to be there before Google blurred everything out. You could see this balcony with this strange alien-looking creature before Google blurred it out. Now, honestly, this creature on the balcony doesn't even look that weird. It looks like a mannequin or a Halloween decoration. Some Reddit users found statues that looked a lot like it, and they said they found similar ones in the past. What's more bizarre is how Google blurred it out. For a long time, you could just come to this spot on Street View and see the whole thing. Then all of a sudden it was gone. But then a while back, Google decided to blur out just the weird creature on the balcony. Not the whole balcony, but just the creature itself. Then they blurred out more of the balcony, and now the whole house is blurred out. It wasn't weird until Google started making it weird. Lady of the North. This entry is just referring to this giant land sculpture in the UK that's often called the Lady of the North. And this next one is a giant crab. So this entry in the Iceberg is referring to this image that's been floating around the internet for a while. It shows what looks like a giant crab off of this harbor. It's a nice picture. The original image was actually taken from Bing Maps, not Google Maps. You can totally see where they got it from. All the patterns in the sand are exactly the same, and all the boats on the dock are in exactly the same spot. It's a nice picture. It's a swastika building. So in San Diego, California, there's a naval base, and from up above, one of the buildings on this naval base looks like this. It's pretty strange how this building came to be, especially since it was constructed in the 1960s. I'm not sure how the architect overlooked that. I've heard some people say it was designed that way for lighting or air conditioning reasons, but the 1960s had pretty good lighting and air conditioning solutions. It seems like they just assumed no one would ever get an aerial view of the building. For a while, people were kind of upset with the Navy for having this building. According to a 2007 Time magazine article, the Navy said they were going to invest money into the building to change its appearance. But that was 15 years ago, and the building still definitely looks like a swastika. There was a road near St. Gallen in Switzerland that had a view of what looked like an angel in the sky for a while. Some people also think it looks like a devil and an angel standing next to each other. If you try to visit this spot on Google Maps now, though, you won't find it. Google must have removed and replaced this Street View data. Red Sea. At first I thought this entry was referring to the Red Sea, but as far as I can tell, nothing Red Sea related is particularly notable on Google Maps. I'm talking about this red lake in Baghdad, Iraq. No one online seems to know for sure why it's red, but some people are saying it could be some kind of algae in the water or sewage. Another idea is that, according to a tipster who told the tech blog Boing Boing, slaughterhouses in Iraq sometimes dump blood into canals. So that's something to think about. My guess is that it's some kind of algae. There's an algae, Dielasalina, that can do this, so there's a pretty good chance that's what's going on here. Ghost Girl, this entry is referring to how at a cemetery in Texas there used to be a photosphere, and if you look to your right at one of the trees, you could spot a girl peeking out from around it. Some folks also see a ghostly figure in the background. A couple people have said they made this photosphere and that it was their daughter who was hiding behind a tree. It's a bit unsettling when you see it. This photosphere has since been removed from the cemetery, so that could be a bit spooky. There's a guy pointing a gun at the camera, so it's probably about this thing in Detroit. There's a house in Detroit that's blurred out. Before it was blurred out, there's a bunch of people standing on the porch, and one of them is pointing a gun at the camera. There's also a video of a dog chasing a car. So if you go to this island in Japan and visit this spot, the dog will start chasing you. It's not much to it. It's pretty cool though. Next up is the Kazakhstan pentagram. This one's in Kazakhstan, where there's a huge pentagram carved into the ground. It's pretty strange why there's a pentagram in this northern part of Kazakhstan. There are a bunch of theories about it. Some people think it's the work of a satanic cult living in Kazakhstan. Others say it's a missile site that's now inactive and that the pentagram shape helps with radar tracking. It's all fun and games, but there's no real evidence to support any of these theories. There was even an NBC article in 2014 with a geologist who lives in the area, and he said it's actually an outline of a park shaped like a star. The article also mentions that the star was a popular symbol during the Soviet era. Kazakhstan was part of the former Soviet Union until it broke away in 1991. So it's a park shaped like a star, but since it looks like a star, it also looks like a pentagram. Sounds like a good cover for a surface-to-air missile size. And then there's Sudan Lips, which is just a geological formation in Sudan that kind of looks like lips. Lost baby. So once again, there's this image that's been around the internet for a while. There's a pic of a baby standing alone in front of a Gucci store. I'm pretty sure this was taken on Google Maps. I've checked every Gucci store on the planet looking for this baby. It's possible that Google removed it. It's possible this image isn't even real. I couldn't find it on Google Maps. If you find this on Google Maps and it exists, please share a link in the comments. I'll definitely pin it. The term donkey killed by Google's car refers to an incident where a donkey was hit by a Google car in Botswana. This has been around for a while, and people were saying Google actually hit a donkey with their Google Street View car. So back in 2013, Google put out an official statement with extra pictures of the incident, and it turns out the donkey wasn't actually hit. It was just a matter of the donkey rolling over at the right moment. Ice ship. This entry is probably about what looks like a frozen ship on an island off of Antarctica. Google Maps says it's over 400 feet long. The ship doesn't seem to match up with any known missing vessels, but maybe it's someone's private yacht that went undocumented, or maybe the government lost a ship and decided to keep it classified or something. Even Snopes, a site dedicated to debunking conspiracy theories and false information, doesn't have a solid explanation for this. One idea is that it could be some sort of ice formation, but it's 400 feet long and looks like a ship. This blonde tourist pic is one of those old school pictures that's been around for ages. It's a picture of a blonde tourist walking in front of the Chichen ruins. Somehow, when this picture was taken, something must have happened that made her knees look backwards. Since then, Google must have updated the data around these ruins because you can't see this girl anymore. And there's this other one called Axe Murder, where you can see a bunch of blurred out people on the side of a road in Longton, England. Luckily, people were able to get screenshots of this before it got blurred out. It looks like the scene of an axe murder, since they have axes. A couple of news outlets reported on this, and in case you were wondering, it's not real, it's just a bit of playful pranking. This entry is pretty open-ended. There are a lot of examples of people seeing things on Google Maps that they think look like ghosts. Like there was this guy on a beach in Australia who looked like he was just kind of faking it. And in New York, there's a street with a bunch of ghost people and ghost cars on it. There's also this supposed screenshot of Oak Bay in New Zealand, which is apparently a snake. It's a picture of what looks like a giant snake moving through the water. Back in 2014, the Daily Mail reported that an engineer named Peter W. took this screenshot of Google Maps after spotting the odd wake in the water. Usually boats don't make waves like that. They usually leave behind some white froth, and it's usually in a different shape. So people are saying it could be a giant sea snake or sea monster. Some people even think it could have been a giant fish. It's an interesting phenomenon, but it's also possible that a smaller, faster watercraft could make a wave like this. Broken face is probably just a typo, probably referring to a picture of a broken face statue or something like that. You can find it in a Dutch city called The Hague. It's part of an art museum there. There's this guy in full orange in South Africa near Johannesburg just walking down a really isolated street. It kind of looks like an escaped prisoner. I really wish Google Maps captured a prisoner escaping, but the odds are it's not. There aren't any prisons near here. If you head down the road, you might spot him hanging out again with some other folks in front of their house. And his orange suit has CWF on it, which doesn't match any prisons. The only place that seems to match up with CWF is this engineering place nearby. So maybe this guy just happened to be wearing his engineering work clothes one day and they kind of look like prisoner stuff. There's a van on fire in Toronto, Canada, right in front of someone's house. And there's this burning van in Brazil too. There's also a plane in the forest on Google Maps. They seem a bit out of place, but most of the time, they're just decommissioned passenger planes that have been bought by private owners to be used as display pieces. There are more interesting specific cases of people finding planes on Google Maps, and we'll be talking about one later down on the Iceberg. The gas mask guy could be referring to one of two things. It could be referring to this picture of a guy in a gas mask crouched off to the side of the road. This picture was supposedly taken off of Google Maps. I couldn't find where exactly on Google Maps this is, but I guess it's real. Or it could be this photosphere near the Chernobyl disaster site in Ukraine, where you can see a huge pile of gas masks surrounding a chair with a dog doll sitting on it wearing a gas mask. It's a bit unsettling, to be honest. Zuraban. So if you come to this neighborhood in Worcester, England, you can see this blurred out thing next to a car. For some reason, Google Street View doesn't let you get up close, and it's like it's pushing you past a blurred spot. Luckily, people had screenshots of what was going on here before Google decided to blur it out. There was what looked like a dead person on the side of the road. That's what a lot of people thought for a while. But it was actually this girl, Aura Bian. This Daily Mail article said they interviewed her, and she said she was just playing dead for fun. Now it looks like she's dead on the side of the road. Body found 22 years later. So the story goes, a man named William Molt went missing in 1997. He was out at a nightclub one night, and the last anyone heard of him, he was on the phone with his girlfriend saying he was driving back to their place in Wellington, Florida. He never made it home that night. He just disappeared. There was an investigation into his disappearance, but no one could find him. No one was sure what happened to him. That was until 22 years later, when in 2019, a submerged car was spotted on Google Maps at a pond where William Moult used to live. They pulled the car out of the lake, and guess what? William Moult's skeleton was still inside. He crashed his car into the lake, suffocated, and was not found until 22 years later. In 2009, a 14-year-old boy named Jose Barrera was murdered in Richmond, California. There's this high crime area in Richmond, California called the Iron Triangle, and that's where he was murdered. Google Maps satellites captured footage of Barrera's body near train tracks, which is why this case is on the Iceberg. If you try to check this spot on Google Maps now, you'll see that it's been updated and his body is no longer there. Google got complaints from Jose Barrera's family. They wanted it removed, and it has since been taken down. It was kind of ridiculous though, because you could see Jose Barrera lying there, and the picture captures the exact moment that the police officers arrived at the scene. There are a couple of examples of kids with guns on Google Maps. One example is a neighborhood in Chicago where you can see kids with guns based on how the other people around them are reacting. It doesn't look like it's a real gun, but who knows? There's another example too, from a suburban area in South Africa, where you can see kids walking and one of them looks like he's holding a gun. Is it a real gun? Probably not, but it's hard to say for sure. There's also this picture of a cow limping across a highway with an injury. I haven't been able to find any info online about where this actually happened, and I can't find it on Google Maps. There's a street called 41 Marmol just outside Mexico City, and it's got a picture of a cow with an injury. If you look at one of the houses, it looks like there's a guy hanging from the roof. When this was first discovered, a lot of people reported it to the police, but it's actually just a puppet. The people living there have said it's just a prank. New Baltimore ghost town. There's a town in the state of New York called New Baltimore, and before Google updated the data in 2016, the street view had this weird ghostly effect. Everything looked distorted, like there was a grainy effect on everything. New Baltimore is a small town in New York with a population of about 3,000. As I mentioned, Google Maps has since fixed this issue, but there hasn't been much clarity on the reason behind it. Malaysian plane. We talked a bit earlier about people finding planes on Google Maps, but this is one of the more interesting cases. If you didn't already know, in March of 2014, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 went missing on a flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. There were 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board. It's still a mystery what happened to the plane. They're not sure if it was hijacked or if it was some sort of mechanical malfunction. They just lost communication with the flight, and it disappeared with everyone on board. They never found the black box. But in 2018, an unidentified plane was found in the Cambodian jungle on Google Maps, and some people thought it might be Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 was a Boeing Tri-7, and this plane in the jungle seems to be a similar length. Also, the Malaysian Transport Ministry said that before they lost contact with the plane, it was in Cambodian airspace. Most people think that Flight 370, which was going to Beijing, somehow turned around and ended up crashing in the Indian Ocean, but the exact location of the crash site is still not confirmed. So some people think that this might be Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. The biggest problem with this theory is that debris from the plane has reportedly been found in Tanzania and other places in Africa, which makes the theory seem unlikely. If the plane had landed in this forest in Cambodia, there's no way debris would have gone into the water and then washed across the Indian Ocean and onto the coast of Africa. But I guess some people think there's a conspiracy against the Malaysian government. They think the government planted debris in Tanzania to close the case. The Malaysian government didn't want to admit that they couldn't find the plane, so they ended up planting debris in Tanzania. Even if this plane isn't Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, it's still a really weird thing. There's not really any reason for this to be out in the middle of the jungle. I couldn't find any reasons for it. The guy who originally found this on Google Maps is a guy named Ian Wilson. Apparently, he's actually tried to go on a trek out into the Cambodian jungle to get to this airplane and try and do an analysis on it and see where it's from and why it's there. But he ended up having to turn back because the trek got too dangerous. He says he's planning another expedition to the plane. So until someone goes out there, we really don't know what's going on with the plane. This entry is talking about this highway road in the movie desert. This highway just ends in the middle of nowhere, and there's a sign that says end. It's pretty strange, and screenshots of how it used to look are even more so. Google has removed the Street View data from when it looked like this, so you can't see it anymore. Now it just looks like this. I'd say this is probably referring to one of two things. It might be referencing this Daily Star article from 2019 where they mentioned a Reddit post. I'm pretty sure this Reddit post has been deleted because I can't find it. Someone on R, Cryptid, posted a video of a guy named Lone Hunter on Google Street View, and he apparently spotted a dog man in the woods. This is what he thinks is the dog man. I think there might be something there, but it also looks like a bunch of shadows. It looks pretty normal on Google Maps. I found the street in the pic, but I'm not sure what angle or spot shows the dog man thing. There's also the possibility that this entry is just not referring to this at all, too. It's possible that this entry isn't referring to a dog man, but rather one of the many humorous dog and man-related things you can find on Google Maps. There are a couple of places where you can see something like this, like a lake in an island and a lake in an island, but the best one is probably in the Philippines. You can find this island in a lake on an island in a lake on an island. Man jumps in Google's car kind of left me with the impression that there was going to be some story out there of someone breaking into a Google Street View car. But it doesn't seem like anything like that has happened, or at least been documented. This might be a reference to the guy in Poland you can see on Google Street View. I know jumping on a car and in a car are different, but this is the closest thing to this entry that I can find. There's a section of streets in Brazil that had some really weird properties for a while. If you move in certain ways and do specific things in this area, you can enter a black void, and you can move around in it a little bit and look at weird shapes and figures in the darkness. It's almost like an out-of-bounds glitch on Google Maps. It doesn't seem like you can perform this glitch anymore, and it seems like this area of Florianopolis has mostly been fixed. I've tried following all the steps in the videos, but it doesn't seem to work anymore. I'm guessing that as Google Street View has been updated and more street data has been collected, the glitch just doesn't work anymore because there's a bigger pool of street data to pull from. It's also possible that Google just went in and fixed it, but this area in Florianopolis still isn't perfect. There are some weird glitch effects that appear in Street View if you stand in certain spots, and the more you look at that demonic-shaped void thing, the more unsettling it gets. So yeah, that was the Google Maps Iceberg. It was pretty good, I guess. If you like what you saw, you can subscribe. Just saying, I'll love you forever if you do.